I never thought a single email could turn my life upside down. My name is Emily Carter, and I've been working at Stratton & Hayes, a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago, for just over 3 years. I started right after graduating from Northwestern, full of optimism and excitement. From day one, I poured everything I had into my work, long hours, weekend projects, and brainstorming sessions that went late into the night. I wasn't just an employee, I wanted to make a difference, to leave a mark that mattered. Stratton & Hayes had always seemed like a place where hard work and loyalty paid off. The office was sleek with glass walls that let in sunlight in the morning and an open layout that encouraged collaboration. My colleagues were talented, ambitious, but most importantly, we respected each other. I thought I'd found my professional home. Life outside work was good too. I had been married to Jake for 2 years, and our weekends were filled with quiet mornings over coffee walks along Lake Michigan and the occasional spontaneous road trip to escape the city. We were happy, balanced, and I felt like I had everything I had worked for: a stable career, a supportive partner, and a future I could plan with confidence. That balance, however, was about to be shattered in a way I never could have imagined. It started subtly with little changes that didn't make sense at first. There were whispers at the water cooler, half-finished sentences, and hurried looks when I entered the room. My manager, Lisa, who had always been warm and approachable, suddenly seemed distant, clipped in her emails, and avoided direct eye contact. I chalked it up to stress or maybe a busy quarter, but the tension in the office was palpable, a static charge in the air that made it impossible to ignore. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I opened my inbox to find a company-wide email with the subject line, "Important Policy Update, Effective Immediately." My heart skipped a beat, a familiar premonition that something was about to go terribly wrong. I clicked it, trying to calm myself with rational thoughts. The message was blunt, sterile, almost surgical in its delivery. As part of our strategic restructuring, all employees who are married will be released from their positions effective immediately. We are committed to hiring younger single employees to foster a dynamic and modern workplace environment. Please contact HR for next steps. I read it 3 times, hoping that my mind was playing tricks on me. Married employees, released immediately. Younger, single employees. My hands shook as I scrolled down, checking to see if this was some kind of cruel joke or phishing attempt. It wasn't. The email carried the official logo, the signature of our HR director, and an internal contact number. Shock, confusion, betrayal. The words didn't even feel real. How could a company justify firing someone simply because they were married? Wasn't that illegal? Hadn't anti-discrimination laws existed for decades? I stared at the screen, my mind racing, the color draining from my face. The office around me was buzzing, but suddenly everything felt muted. My colleagues were whispering, their faces pale and anxious. I saw Mark from accounting, usually so confident and sarcastic, slump in his chair, staring at his own inbox. A few desks down, Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her coffee mug, eyes wide. The reality hit. This wasn't just me. The company was throwing out a significant portion of its workforce, targeting people like me, loyal, married, seasoned. I sank into my chair, trying to breathe. My mind kept replaying my life outside the office, the plans Jake and I had made, our apartment, our savings, the weekends that felt like our little sanctuary. Suddenly, everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted, seemed to teeter on the edge of collapse. And then, through the fog of disbelief and panic, one thought cut through everything: I have to fight this. I won't let them take my career or my life without a fight. The shock from the email hadn't faded overnight, and it clung to me as I stepped into the office the next morning. The morning after, the email felt surreal. I arrived at Stratton & Hayes with a tight knot in my stomach, gripping my bag as if it could shield me from the storm that awaited. The usual hum of conversation and clacking keyboards seemed heavier, somehow laden with tension. I noticed small clusters of employees huddled together, whispers tumbling like nervous waves. As I walked past my manager's office, I saw her, Lisa, on the phone, her voice low, urgent, almost guilty. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and I saw something there I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Fear that mirrored my own. I sat at my desk, trying to focus, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but my mind kept replaying the email. All married employees will be released immediately. The words burned in my head like acid. The absurdity, the injustice, the sheer audacity of it all. It was impossible to comprehend. In my career, I had faced tough clients, impossible deadlines, even office politics, but nothing had ever prepared me for this. Nothing felt so fundamentally wrong. By mid-morning, HR sent out individual appointment requests. My heart sank. I knew what that meant. Each married employee had to meet with them one by one to discuss next steps. My stomach churned as I imagined the conversation: a sterile office, a polite HR representative, a monotone explanation, and the devastating words, "I dreaded your employment is terminated." I glanced around at my colleagues. Some were trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy, typing furiously, pretending not to hear the whispers. Others sat frozen, staring blankly at their screens, faces, pale eyes glistening. There was a collective dread hanging over the office, a kind of silent mourning for futures that had been abruptly stripped away. When it was finally my turn, I walked into the HR office, forcing myself to breathe deeply. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, an odd combination that felt strangely cold. Marissa, the HR director, smiled politely, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, please have a seat," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Her hands were folded neatly on the table, and her posture was professional, almost rehearsed. I sat down, heart hammering. I read the email, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yes," she replied, nodding. "We understand this is difficult, but this is part of the company's new direction. All married employees are being released to make room for a younger single workforce. We've prepared a severance package and can provide career transition support." I blinked, stunned. My brain refused to process her words properly. "But this is illegal, isn't it? You can't just fire people because they're married." My voice trembled despite my attempt to stay calm. Marissa's expression remained neutral. "The company believes this approach fosters a dynamic and modern workplace. We are following internal guidelines and consulting legal counsel." I left the office, shaking each step, feeling like I was walking through quicksand. The corridor seemed longer, the fluorescent lights harsher. My colleagues' faces mirrored the same confusion and anger. I felt a shared shockwave rippling through us all. Back at my desk, I found a note from Jake in my bag, a simple, "Call me when you can," and I realized just how much this affected more than just my career. It threatened my life outside the office, too. Our plans, our stability, everything we had built together suddenly felt fragile. The meeting with HR had shaken me, but sitting at my desk, I realized inaction was not an option. I refused to accept this quietly. If the company thought it could dismantle our lives without resistance, they were sorely mistaken. I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was fighting for fairness, for dignity, for the principle that no one should be punished for living a life they've chosen outside of work. The day after my HR meeting, the office felt like a pressure cooker. Every step I took, every conversation I overheard, seemed loaded with tension. My colleagues exchanged wary glances, whispered rumors, and nervous laughter that barely masked the fear running through the room. I felt like I was moving through a minefield, one wrong word away from an explosion. I couldn't just sit back. I refused to let the company bully me or anyone else out of a life we had worked for. I spent the morning researching labor laws, discrimination policies, and employee rights. My laptop was covered in tabs, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidelines, local Illinois labor statutes, and online forums where people shared stories of wrongful termination. Each new piece of information fueled my determination. By mid-morning, I had drafted an email to the HR department requesting clarification on the policy. I wasn't polite, at least not entirely. My words were direct. I need a written explanation for how this policy complies with anti-discrimination law. I also want to know what legal counsel has been consulted. Finally, I'd like to discuss alternatives to termination. I hit send and felt a small surge of control in a world that had felt suddenly chaotic. As the hours ticked by, I noticed the subtle shifts in my coworkers. Sarah from accounting walked past me with tears in her eyes but whispered, "Emily, I don't know what to do." Mark leaned over, murmuring, "I'm documenting everything just in case. We can't let them do this to us." It was clear that my resistance had inspired some of them to quietly take action as well. Then came the calls. HR started scheduling one-on-one sessions, ostensibly to discuss transition options. But I approached each meeting armed with knowledge questions and, most importantly, a sense of dignity. I asked about the legal basis for the policy-requested copies of any written guidelines and made it clear that I was considering outside counsel. I could see in Marissa's eyes that they hadn't anticipated this level of pushback. Meanwhile, word of the policy spread outside the office. I received text messages from friends at other firms, some expressing shock, others incredulity. "You're kidding, right? They can't do that." One friend even suggested I contact a local labor attorney immediately, and I did. I left the office early to meet with a lawyer who specialized in employment law. She listened patiently as I recounted the events, then leaned forward, her voice firm. "Emily, this is clearly discriminatory. They may try to claim it's for business strategy, but firing employees solely because they're married is illegal. We can fight this." That afternoon, I returned to the office with renewed resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for everyone caught in the crosshairs of this policy. The tension was palpable. Conversations were charged. The usual water cooler chatter had transformed into strategic whispers. Every glance seemed to carry unspoken agreements, silent alliances forming amid the fear. Even Lisa, my manager, who had seemed distant in the past, approached me cautiously. "Emily, you're handling this well," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear she felt herself. I wish more people had your courage." Her words were small, but they were the first cracks in the company's carefully constructed facade. By the end of the day, I had a plan document, everything consult legal counsel, and quietly rally my colleagues. We couldn't be reckless, but we also couldn't be passive. The storm was building, and I was determined not to be swept away. For the first time since the email arrived, I felt a spark of hope. I realized that standing up didn't just mean protecting my job, it meant taking control of my life, asserting my rights, and refusing to let fear dictate my actions. The real battle was just beginning. The days leading up to the final company decision felt like walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every email, every meeting, every passing glance carried a weight I couldn't shake. The office, once a place of routine and comfort, now felt like a battlefield. Anxiety was etched on everyone's faces, some masking it with forced smiles, others with frantic typing, pretending work could shield them from the coming blow. Then it happened. The announcement came in the form of a mandatory all-staff meeting. The subject line was neutral enough, but we all knew what it meant. The decision about the married employee's fate was final. My heart pounded as I walked into the conference room, a pit of fear and determination coiling in my stomach. CEO Jonathan Stratton stood at the front, his posture rigid, his face unreadable. The hum of whispers died as the room fell silent. The company had gathered us all to present the so-called strategic rationale, but to me it felt like the moment of truth, a final reckoning. Jonathan cleared his throat. As you know, Stratton & Hayes has made a strategic decision to restructure our workforce, he said. His words were calm and controlled, but I barely heard them. My mind was spinning with fear, anger, and disbelief. My pulse raced as he continued outlining severance packages, transition plans, and the expected departures. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let the room stay silent while injustice was served. My hands shook slightly as I stood, my voice quivering but firm. "Excuse me, Jonathan. I need to speak." The room shifted. Some colleagues looked at me with shock, others with silent support. I laid out the facts referencing employment law, anti-discrimination protections, and the outrageous nature of the policy. Firing employees because they are married is not only unethical, it's illegal. And more importantly, it's destroying morale, trust, and the culture you claim to value. My voice grew steadier with each word, fueled by months of fear research and righteous indignation. There was a long, tense pause. I could see Jonathan's jaw tighten. Marissa, the HR director, shifted uncomfortably, caught off guard by my directness. Around me, whispers rippled through the room. Colleagues were nodding subtly, some even daring to murmur words of encouragement. Then came the real moment of tension. Jonathan asked for a private meeting with me after the session. My heart sank. Was this the end or the beginning of something bigger? In the private office, the air felt heavy. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, and said quietly, "Emily, you've made your point. You've been thorough. But do you understand the risk you're taking by challenging this?" I met his gaze without flinching. "I understand, but I'm not afraid of standing up for what's right, and I won't stay silent while others are being treated unfairly." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of respect beneath the stern exterior. After a tense moment, he sighed. "You've forced us to reconsider. I can't promise anything immediately, but we're going to review the policy and the legal implications. We'll also explore alternatives for the affected employees." I left that office with my heart pounding, not just relief, but a fierce, undeniable sense of empowerment. It wasn't victory yet, but it was the turning point. I had taken a stand, exposed the flaws in the system, and reminded them that employees were not expendable chess pieces. Back in the main office, I could feel the shift, too. Colleagues' postures straightened, whispers became conversations, and a sense of cautious hope began to weave through the team. We were still standing on shaky ground, but for the first time since the email, it felt like we might just weather the storm together. Deep down, I knew one thing. I had discovered a strength in myself I never imagined existed. Fear had been a companion for weeks, but now courage, resolve, and the support of those around me burned brighter than ever. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The day after the tense meeting with the CEO, HR called me in again. My stomach sank as I stepped into the office. The moment the termination letter landed in front of me, I felt the floor drop beneath my feet. I had fought, argued, and stood my ground, but here it was, in black and white. I was officially fired. Shock and disbelief rippled through my colleagues. Some tried to console me, others just stared, unable to process the injustice. I could have walked out silently, swallowed my pride, and moved on. But something inside me ignited a fierce determination not to let this slide. This wasn't just about me. It was about standing up against blatant unfairness. Within hours, I contacted a labor attorney. We meticulously gathered evidence, company-wide emails, HR notices, colleague statements, and the discriminatory policy itself. The lawyer's voice was firm yet encouraging. Emily, they clearly crossed the line. You have every right to challenge this. The lawsuit quickly gained attention. Media outlets, advocacy groups, and social media amplified the story. Stratton and Hayes' once seemingly untouchable faced mounting pressure. Weeks of legal proceedings culminated in a landmark ruling. The company was ordered to pay millions in compensation to all affected employees and officially abandon the discriminatory policy. The courtroom victory was exhilarating, but so was the sense of justice finally served. Even while the case was ongoing, I refused to wait idly. I updated my resume, reached out to my professional network, and applied to companies that valued fairness and integrity. Within a few weeks, I received an offer from a new firm, a company where my skills were respected, my contributions recognized, and my voice genuinely heard. Stepping into my new office for the first time, I felt a mixture of relief, excitement, and empowerment. I had reclaimed control over my career and my life. The office, once tense and oppressive, now buzzed with whispers of triumph. Former colleagues celebrated the legal victory quietly, some sharing the news that the judgment had restored hope not only for themselves, but for every employee who had been affected. Seeing a giant corporation held accountable for injustice brought a rare, deep satisfaction, a feeling shared by anyone who had followed the story. For me, the victory went beyond financial compensation. It was proof that courage, persistence, and standing up for what's right could topple even the most powerful authority. I had been fired, yes, but I'd fought back and I had won. I had turned fear and anger into action, and the result transformed not only my life, but the lives of countless others. I had lost a position, but I had gained justice, empowerment, and a fresh start in a workplace where fairness was a priority. And as I walked through the doors of my new office, I knew one thing for certain: the future was finally mine to shape.